A prince, a palace, a convicted pedophile with a revolving door of access to the highest levels of British society. This is the story of how Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son, once protected by rank, privilege, and royal silence, watched his world collapse under the weight of decisions made behind closed palace walls. From Buckingham Palace to a BBC interview that shocked the world, to a legal settlement that answered nothing, this is the full story. Born in 1960, Andrew entered the world not just as a child, but as the Queen's second son, the so-called spare to the heir. From the earliest days, his life was shaped by the privileges and expectations of monarchy. He attended elite schools, trained at the Royal Naval College, and by 1982 he was serving as a helicopter pilot aboard HMS Invincible during the Falklands War. The commendation he received for his service was both a personal milestone and a public relations triumph for the palace. For a time, Andrew was the dashing, decorated prince, a symbol of royal reliability. In 1986, he married Sarah Ferguson. The wedding was broadcast to millions, and the couple soon moved into Royal Lodge, a sprawling estate tucked inside Windsor Great Park. Even after their divorce a decade later, Andrew and Sarah continued to share the property, raising Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie together. The arrangement was unconventional, but the walls of Royal Lodge offered privacy and protection that few outside the royal circle could ever imagine. The lodge itself became more than just a home. In 2003, Andrew secured a 75-year lease from the Crown Estate for a £1 million premium. The annual rent was £1. Over the next 6 years, he poured nearly £7.5 million into renovations. The result was a 30-room mansion with manicured grounds, private security, and all the trappings of inherited power. On paper, the lease ran until 2078, effectively guaranteeing Andrew a sanctuary for life, unless the monarchy itself intervened. Royal Lodge was not just a residence. It was a statement. It signaled Andrew's enduring place at the heart of the institution, no matter how public opinion shifted or how his personal life unfolded. Understanding who Andrew was makes what he became all the more extraordinary. The fortress he built for himself was designed to keep the outside world at bay. But when outsiders finally did arrive, the question was no longer whether Andrew belonged at Royal Lodge, but whether Royal Lodge and the institution it represented could withstand the costs of keeping him. In 1999, the first threads of risk entered Royal Lodge. Jeffrey Epstein, an American financier with a reputation that already raised eyebrows, was introduced to Prince Andrew through social circles that included Ghislaine Maxwell. The encounter was not an isolated dinner or a fleeting handshake. Instead, it marked the beginning of a relationship that would steadily erode the boundaries between private privilege and public risk. By May 2006, Epstein and Maxwell were not only on the guest list, they were photographed in the gardens of Royal Lodge, just steps from the heart of the British monarchy. That day, they joined figures like Harvey Weinstein at Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday celebration. The timing was impossible to ignore. 2 months earlier, a U.S. arrest warrant had been issued for Epstein on charges of child sexual assault. Yet here he was, welcomed into the sanctuary that symbolized royal security and tradition. The records do not show any formal vetting of Epstein or Maxwell by palace security. There is no evidence of background checks or risk assessments required by the royal household safeguarding policy. Instead, their presence was facilitated by personal connections, arranged through private secretaries, not official channels. In 2006, guest lists and visitor logs placed Epstein at Royal Lodge again, this time with no sign that anyone in authority had paused to ask who was being let inside or why. This was not about friendship. It was access, and that access had a cost. The doors of Royal Lodge, once designed to keep the world out, now stood open to individuals who posed a direct threat to the integrity of the institution. The question was not just about who Andrew trusted, but about who was permitted to cross the threshold at all. When a convicted sex offender and his closest confidant can move freely within the walls of Windsor Great Park, the issue is no longer personal discretion. It is a breach of national security, carried out in plain sight. The cost of that access would soon become clear, not just for Andrew, but for the monarchy itself. Paul Page, a former Metropolitan Police Protection Officer assigned to the royal household, stepped forward in 2024 with allegations that rattled the palace's carefully maintained image of security. According to Page, the safeguards at Royal Lodge were more ceremonial than real. He described a system where official protocols, background checks, visitor logs, and even the royal household's own safeguarding policy were routinely bypassed. Requests for access came through private channels, not through the chain of command. Page said unvetted visitors, some linked to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, were waved in on the strength of a phone call or a nod from a senior aide. For years, these lapses went unchallenged. When a royal protection officer is raising national security flags, this goes far beyond personal scandal. The Metropolitan Police, facing mounting public pressure, launched a review of the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit. In 2024, they began reaching out to former officers, asking for statements about what they witnessed inside Royal Lodge. The Royalty and Specialist Protection Review, though couched in careful language, acknowledged a gap between written policy and daily practice. The consequences were not theoretical. In the absence of real oversight, the doors of the monarchy were left open to individuals whose presence posed risk, not just to the royal family, but to the country. The revolving door the bodyguards joked about was not just Andrew's problem. It was everyone's. And now finally, people are talking. On November 16, 2019, Prince Andrew sat across from Emily Maitlis in the BBC Newsnight studio. The world watched as he tried to explain away his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. He insisted he had no recollection of meeting Virginia Giuffre. He said he could not sweat, and that he had a peculiar medical condition caused by an adrenaline overdose in the Falklands War. The denials landed with a thud. Within hours, headlines called the interview a disaster. By the next morning, sponsors began to pull out. British American Tobacco, Unilever, and HSBC withdrew advertising from Newsnight. Charities and institutions, over 20 in total, announced they would cut ties with Andrew, from the Royal Marines to the National Portrait Gallery. One by one, decades-old patronages vanished. The palace released a statement on December 9th saying Andrew would step back from public duties for the foreseeable future. The Queen's second son, once a fixture at royal events, now found himself isolated. He went in trying to save his reputation. He walked out having destroyed it on live television. The question that remains, was Andrew a man who simply made catastrophic personal choices, or was he part of something far more deliberate and far more dangerous? On August 30th, 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. The complaint accused Andrew of sexual assault when Jeffrey was 17 as part of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking network. Andrew's legal team tried to have the case dismissed, but in January 2022, Judge Lewis Kaplan ruled it would proceed. Weeks later, on February 15, 2022, a confidential settlement was reached. Reports placed the amount near £12 million, paid from Andrew's private funds, with a portion directed to a victim's charity. The agreement included no admission of guilt and bound both parties to silence. A settlement is not an admission, but it is not nothing. The palace made its position clear immediately after. In February 2022, Buckingham Palace issued a statement. It said Andrew would no longer use the style His Royal Highness. All remaining military titles and royal patronages were stripped at the direction of King Charles III. Staff who once managed his schedules and maintained Royal Lodge quietly withdrew, leaving the estate to its occupant and his memories. The Royal Household Registry removed Andrew's name from every official listing. The message was unmistakable. There would be no return to public life, no ceremonial duties, no path back to the inner circle. Royal isolation is not just about titles, it is about whether the people around you are willing to stay. Freedom of information searches, police logs, and media archives all come up empty. There is no authenticated audio or video of Andrew's alleged eviction rant. The story, endlessly recycled by tabloids, remains unverified. Yet the real question lingers. When rumors can so easily fill gaps in the record, what does that say about the accountability of the institution itself? As talk of succession and reform grows louder, the absence of hard evidence leaves more than just one man's reputation in doubt. Prince Andrew spent decades sheltered by rank, by silence, and by a mother who was also a monarch. The BBC interview was supposed to close the chapter. The 2022 settlement was supposed to draw a line. Neither did. The story of Andrew Windsor is ultimately a story about what happens when institutions protect their own long past the point they should. It is also what it looks like when that protection finally runs out.